So you're a filmmaker?
Yes, I'm a filmmaker.
You're glad.
I think there's a different way of making film. For example, I would not wish that every film looks the same. I don't think you should defend yourself so much. But for example, my work is very different to yours, but I like your film a lot. I think it's very disturbing, but it's also very strong. And when we are speaking about disturbance, like the baby boomers being disturbed by this kind of filmmaking, I did a film on Bollywood shooting films in the Berner Alps, very close to here. It was actually the last 15 years. A lot of Bollywood movies were, shot here in the Berner Oberland. And when I was doing this film, it was a film for TV. I could see that the baby boomer generation indeed was disturbed a little bit, because their view of Indian film was this kind of rice-filled films, this kind of films you might hate, but it was also just one concept of film. They thought that the Indian film should look this way, And of course Bollywood is about, not all of Bollywood, but some part of Bollywood is about like trash. It's very simple stories, but I think in trash and in simplicity you have something very honest. You have a truth, which I even also feel in your film, because the first time when you were kind of playing with these elements of the Tollywood, films, I was also a little bit disturbed. I was a little bit irritated, but then I realized that it's actually very intelligent what you did, because you kind of respect a way of filmmaking which we might, think it's very trashy, it's very simple, it's really not art. But I think now, and it's true, there is a generation which has a close connection to trash. It's part of a culture, and indeed the baby boomer generation had its problem with trash and kitsch, etc. They have to kind of defend. Now I don't think that you have to defend yourself so much as you do now. Everybody loves you here.
No, they do, but I don't necessarily love everyone here.
Okay.
So it may not go two ways. I mean, the job of an artist is to look at the data, is to stir people up. And that's what they did. I mean, look at Richardson's wonderful book on Picasso. When Cocteau was doing Parade, people like Tristan Tzar and so on were coming along, and they were yelling, and the cops were called along, and they were offensive. Everyone's too frightened to sort of get up and do strange things, sort of smash a cup against the wall or something. But that's what the Dadaists did. That's what happened in art. Art has become very scared. Everyone's very, very careful. And they're frightened to be embarrassed by someone like me, I'm embarrassing. I'm really embarrassing. And that's the way it goes. That's what artists do. We're freaks.
But your reputation is a political artist. But when you came in the end of the 60s to New York, you get even in close to the factory of Andy Warhol.
That's
you
right.
told me you even were shooting with a sweet movie. And now I also thought, are you also some kind of pop artist now? Because you show your films to young people, not to the intellectuals who go to the museums.
I've always been a pop artist. I was a pop artist with Andy Warhol. It's interesting, I was very naive. Andy was a lot older than I was. And the the person who got me to go to New York was Clement Greenberg, the great critic of minimalism, who came to Australia, and he saw my work, and at that stage I was doing abstract minimalist painting. And when I got to New York, I met Andy Warhol and I met Joe Delaney, and so I'm a combination of both. Joe was the great artist, black artist of the civil rights movement, and he believed in going out into the streets and doing art about what was happening now, and that's when I started doing my photojournalism as well. But I said to Andy, I think news is art, and he said, yeah, and obviously he figured that out a long time ago. He had his car crashes and his tabloid stuff, and Andy just worked in he did everything from pornographic movies to backing the Velvet Underground. He was trying to find ways to reach people Unfortunately, he became kind of like a darling of the elite in New York, and a lot of his ideas were subverted, and he was overmanaged. But I belong to that. You know, I think that I've made 60 minutes. You know, the program's 60 minutes, and I can get into a 60-minute, like 15-minute slot on 60 minutes. I can get everything I want to say about Iraq, and it's seen by millions and millions of people. But the art gallery people in the museums don't think that's art. And I know it's art. But this has been my problem, that somehow or other people want you to walk your art through a museum, and then somehow or other you become married to art, and it really is an official marriage and blah blah blah. But most museums and so on are too narrow-minded to see the kind of pop art that someone like I do with a film like this as being art.
You mean art like popular art? Or?
No, I'm a fine artist, there's no doubt about that. But if I do a 60 minutes, right, and I know it's art, the people in the museum still are too dumb to see that. I'd need to put it on some fucking little video set in some Biennale, and then people look back and say, shit, that's art. But why do you have to do that? I mean, why can't art people know that an artist did it, put it on 60 minutes, and it's art? Why does it have to walk through a museum?
Why is it so important to you that it is accepted as art? Because it's already having an impact if it's also a documentary.
No, it's just my way of saying most people in art museums are gatekeepers, and they're dumb and they don't understand what art really is.
You're really taking it out of me now.
No, I'm not taking it out on you. Sorry, you're probably a very nice person. But
yeah, but you will never find out.
I'll never find out, and I don't care, because I've spent my whole life being persecuted by people like you, because...
How do you know?
Well, I have.
I would persecute you. I mean, I never will have the chance to say that I really think you made a clever film, because by introducing these Bollywood elements, you kept me on the wrong track. I thought, oh, it's not so violent as I thought it would be. And then when you actually showed violence, it hit so much harder than it would have if you had shown it right from the beginning. So I thought this is a very clever way to sensitize me again, because even as this professor said in the movie, people get used to violence. People get, so you have even to reinvent the beheadings. So I thought this is really clever. So how's that for a start?
Well, that's good, and that I've actually gotten you to say something from your heart, which is probably something you don't often do.
I haven't met you before, yeah?
No, but what I'm saying is this is theatre. You're lucky, you're in Bern, and you're sitting in a room with a real artist, and you're experiencing real theatre, and this is real drama, and we're not just having sweet talk on a Sunday afternoon. So I've got you going, and I've got you going, and I've got you going, and hopefully I've got you going, and that's theatre. That's what artists do. This is theatre. I love you, darling. I mean, this is what I do. This is performance. This is performance.
At least one museum in the world must accept you, and
no, they don't.
It's a museum of modern art where you show your film.
No, they're showing the film. They're showing the film. We're showing the film. But listen, I don't want to get onto that track. What I'm saying is that this is an interesting situation. You've got my paintings in Bern, and you've got the film, and you've got the Paul Klee Museum down there. You've got the great medieval art that's in this museum. I went and saw, you know, your Dance of Death painting. That's the stuff that interests me in the museum. I relate more to the Grunwald-like triptych, where the Temptation of St. Anthony with the demons. Like, I looked into that. And they're these pig-faced monsters with their teeth and so on. Well, I'm doing drawings like that now because I see war as horror. You know, like Goya did a period where he was showing the victims of war. Like Henry asked me, George, why aren't you doing the victims anymore? And I've just realised that these soldiers, these governments, as Helen put in the Jackson Browne song, who are killing their own, you know, lives in the balance. It's not a joke. I mean, there's a lot of lives in the balance in these places. And this kind of film has to be made, and people have to think about these things.
I have a question about reality and realism, because sometimes, as you say, it's almost not bearable to see the reality in the Swat Valley with the Taliban, how they kill a 10-year-old
kid.
And you mentioned Grunwald. You also have to go to the Fine Art Museum here to see the paintings.
I have the triptych,
Have you seen Niklaus Manuel Deutsch?
The triptych of the
500 years old.
I have.
The Temptation of Saint
So that's what I was just talking about.
Yes. And was there? I think there was also a reality. What he showed.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that work in your museum, the Temptation of St. Anthony, is very close to what I'm experiencing, because when I'm in Pakistan, I'm in a medieval world where 10-year-old children are cutting off heads. And it's very, very similar to what, and this is a medieval city. I spend a lot of my life in medieval times, and that's what I think I've brought to you in the film, and it's affecting my art as well. Yeah, you know, and the people there are wearing medieval clothes, and they've got medieval attitudes to women. It was probably better in medieval times here than it is there for women now. So no, that's the very thing. So I go to a modern art museum. I went and saw the art forum in Berlin. There was nothing there that interested me, but I can go downstairs in your museum and see the medieval art, and I love it. I just feel that the gatekeepers in the museums and the artists, the contemporary artists, are dropping the ball. And the thing that everyone says to me is, why do you need an artist to go to these places? Why an artist? You know, there's plenty of journalists there, there's photojournalists, there's documentary filmmakers. I don't really even feel that I am a documentary filmmaker. I feel that I'm an artist making films, you know, in these places. And any journalist knows the difference between me and a journalist. An artist plays with the reality. An artist deals with the emotional side of the thing. Right in the heart of this film, I say, why don't people ever stand up for artists? They stand up for Jews and gypsies or whatever, you know, when they're persecuted. Why don't people care about artists? And this film is a plea for artists.
Have you gone back with your film to Peshawar? Have you shown it to these people?
The film is on YouTube, and I'm in contact with everyone in Peshawar, and as you know, I'm going back with Oxfam, and I'm making 2 films in Afghanistan. There's only 2% literacy in the tribal belt, so the average person, my film would be incredibly incomprehensible to them because it's in English and they can't read the Pashtun subtitles. But I'm very happy to show it at Peshawar University, where people can, and I don't mind showing it to people, but they just won't understand it. I made 2 dramas in Pashtun which have been very, very popular.
When I did my film The Giant Buddhas, I finally went back to Bamiyan, and I had the same problem, they cannot read subtitles. So I did a Pashto version of the film in Kabul, and it was quite a nice version. But they changed, for example, the title of my film, The Giant Buddhas, into another, you know, because there is no
Buddhas.
And there is nobody bigger than Allah, so they couldn't accept the title. But finally there was like 3,500 people showing up to watch for the first time in their life a film. So I would encourage you to maybe do a Pashto version, just voice over. You have to do voice over.
Where do I get the money to do that? You tell me, where do I get the money to do that? Do I just take it out of my pocket? I mean, this trip here has cost me money. You're all seeing my art. I won't sell a single work here. I'm paying my hotel here. Where do I get the money to make a Pashtun film and do that? Maybe in Switzerland you've got the funding to do that. I haven't got the money to do that sort of thing. I'd love to do it. But why do I have to be some sort of fucking NGO to do that sort of stuff? You know? Where do I get the money to do that? I can barely survive, brother. Any more questions?
No? Yes, you said that you have been all alone in your film, because I'm very, but that's not true. Because you have a second, this second man, and I'm very interested about your relation with him.
The second man was just a kid that I taught how to use a camera, who'd never picked up a camera before in his life. He's a Pashtun and his father's a Taliban. I didn't know him before I arrived in Peshawar.
And how was your relation with him? It's
fantastic. I took him back to Australia for 3 months. It took 6 months to edit this film, so I had 2-3 month periods in Australia editing the film, and I've helped his sister to get a scholarship to study at Peshawar University. And he was great. He was great. I actually started with a different cameraman who was big and tough and looked like a Taliban, but he wasn't good on a camera. And I had Peshawar, I was just giving him a lift like a hitchhiker in the back of the car one day, and he heard me discussing the film with the guy that I was using as a cameraman, who was pretty thick and stupid. And he said, "That's a crazy idea, it'll get you both killed." And I realised that this kid in the back was better than the man that I had in the front helping me. So I immediately employed him, and thank God he had a huge amount of natural talent with a camera. He learnt very fast.
But you said his father is a Taliban. Didn't he get in a terrible conflict with his father?
No, look, it's just so hypocritical. The reason why I was beginning with Nazib, who's the really serious Taliban of the film, is because Waqar, that's the name of my assistant's uncle, his mother's brother, is like the Karl Marx of Talibanism. He's a great thinker of Talibanism, and he wouldn't be interviewed because he doesn't believe in cameras anymore. He's got 2 PhDs from English universities, but he's sort of gone backwards. Anyway, his uncle is sending Taliban soldiers out every day to close girls' schools. But when I got his niece a scholarship to study at university, he congratulated me and sent me a thank you. It's very selfish. It's very hypocritical. So the whole family, even the Taliban, were terribly grateful to me that I was helping Waqar. I was employing him, giving him trips and helping him to get jobs. He got a terrific job with a Lahore telecommunications agencies with my assistants after the film, doing film and similar projects with them. And like the editor, the Pashtun editor that I had, you know, he worked on the Pashtun film. Because he saw me making a documentary, he's now making documentaries, really good ones, for NGOs and other people. So basically being there, going in there, I go alone. As I said, I go alone with my cameras, with a little bit of money, and then I spread art everywhere so that Javed and everyone, they all lift their game with their film. The editor, who's only ever done cheap Pashtun film, starts to want to make documentaries. You know, it's like a radiating thing. And that's where I agree with the old Sufi. You know, he says Sufism is the company of other Sufis. Well, I go in there like a Sufi. I mean, he likens it to being like there's one ripe melon in a paddock and it sends all the other melons ripe. I go in there with some high quality cameras and a little bit of money and a lot of inspiration, and it spreads.